In 1787, Dr. James McHenry, one of Maryland's delegates to the Constitutional Convention, took notes during the convention and after the convention, and he came across a conversation between Dr. Benjamin Franklin and a woman, and she asked, what did you give us, a monarchy or a republic? And I bet most of you know what he said. He said, a republic if you can keep it. I always open WLN conferences with this story because it is a challenge to each of us as an individual in this nation where we prize self-governance. What Dr. Franklin said was a direct challenge to each of us as an individual to take responsibility for our own governance and to step up. Now, we have a problem in this state, and we have a problem in this country, and I guess you could say we have a problem around the world. Socialism and statism is on the march. There have been victories going the other way, but they are on the march. And we have largely been on defense. We have apologized for capitalism in some cases. We have compromised in places where we should not compromise. I'm not saying you shouldn't ever compromise, but we shouldn't compromise our cardinal principles. We need to go on the offense because the wheel will turn. And when it does, we will only be able to take advantage of it if we are in position to take advantage of it. We need to get our people trained. We need to get our people engaged. This is all very, very important stuff, and it is the point of this conference today. Western Liberty Network, this is our 9th annual conference, and the theme, as always, is Take the Offensive. Who's ready to take the offensive today? I'd like to begin by honoring our vets. How many veterans are here today? Can you raise your hands? Thank you very much. Now we have 2 veterans today who are going to honor us by presenting the colors as we begin our conference. And both of these gentlemen are members of No Veteran Left Behind Oregon. They are active, they are engaged, they have served our country, and I'm very proud and honored that they are here to present the colors. What we have is Mr. Keith Fritsch, Mr. Bruce Broussard. They are both Marine veterans. Mr. Fritsch served in the Korean War. Mr. Broussard served in the Vietnam War. Yes. So, Mr. Broussard, would you please present the colors?
Post. Can you hear me, everybody? Good. Yes. Post the colors. Just hold it. Can you hold it? Let me have someone to hold it, Keith, and then you can just stand back. Okay, good. Got it? All right. Marine will find the hole. Okay. Been good, buddy? Okay, fine. Ready? Hand salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very true. Post. And God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to ask Bob Soden to come up. He's agreed to lead us in a moment of prayer and reflection, depending on your beliefs. So, Bob, come on up. Whoop.
Thank you, Richard. Everybody show reverence to our Lord this morning. And bow our heads. Everybody stand. Thank you. We come before you, Lord, to welcome you to this leadership conference. We ask that you would bless our speakers and instructors. May we grasp those things that you want us to understand. We thank you for the opportunity to come and gather this day. We ask for your hand of blessing on this conference. We ask that you would guide and direct this conference so that it's full of wisdom and productivity. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work and our goals this day. Amen. Thank you. And be sure and go and visit our tables. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Bob is another veteran and a real fighter for liberty. He does everything. I don't know how he does it. Thank you, Bob. I'd like to introduce a few people who work with Western Liberty Network. Of course, I'm Richard Burke, the Executive Director, but I'd like to introduce our President, the President of the Board of Directors, Greg Burnett, right over there. Yeah, he signs every paper I put in front of him, so thank you, Greg. That's great. I'd also like to introduce Ken Morris. Where's Ken? There he is. Ken Morris is the new Washington State Director. We are spreading out. This is going to be a national organization. And Ken is not alone. He's going to work with Erin James. Where are you, Erin? She might be outside working. She's been greeting people and making sure they find this place. And Mark Delphine, if he's here. Are you here yet, Mark? I thought I saw him. Anyway, they are helping Ken in Washington State, and we're looking forward to being organized there. And we have one affiliate now in Texas, and we are talking to people about starting up in California, Idaho, Utah, and Montana. And we'll see where we go from there. Next year's conference could be a truly national conference. We'll see how that goes. Also, Mike Neerman. Where's Mike? There he is. That's State Representative Mike Neerman. He is a WLN alum. He attended an early conference when we were just getting formed, got active, got elected to the state legislature, and he has printed these off for us. This is a list that everyone should have. This should be given at the registration desk, showing what offices you're eligible to run for in this spring's nonpartisan elections. Filing deadlines are in March. The election is in May. Now, how many people here have had their name on a ballot? See hands up. This is awesome, because when WLN started, it was probably about a quarter that many people that had hands in the air. Of those whose name has been on a ballot, who has won an election? That's good. Let's give these people a hand. There are people that are catalysts for change. Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, Donald Trump. You've heard other people like that. But you know, they don't stick around, whether for good or ill. Sometimes that's good. But they are catalysts of change. But for enduring change, it happens at the grassroots, the fabric of our political culture. If you want to change something over time, you have to do it at the local level. I see our political culture as a fabric, each inch with hundreds of threads, and each thread represents a public office. Maybe cemetery control board, maybe vector control board, school board, fire and rescue. We need to train people to get elected. This is how we take responsibility for our own governance, by literally taking responsibility for our own governance. Not everybody wants to be a public office holder, but there are other things to do. You can be a citizen lobbyist. You can be a campaign volunteer. We all have to do something. And the purpose of Western Liberty Network is to build cadres of trained, limited government activists who are ready to take up the mantle and make the wheel turn, and when it does turn, be in position to take advantage of it. Paper here. A few more people to introduce. Anastasia Yuskina, my stepdaughter. She is outside working the table. Her new husband, Faisal, Sabrina Marie Fisher, Ben Fisher, Faith Moreland, and then, of course, I have to make special recognition for my beautiful wife, Natasha. She is magnificent. She is a treasure. I love her very much. And she's been very, very helpful. She gets a lot of the little details I miss, like these sunflower bouquets and all of those sorts of things. She's just absolutely fantastic. Okay. Cell phones. Who's got cell phones? Yeah. Silence them. Okay? If you need to have a conversation, go out into the hallway. We're here to work today. And I also need to go over some of our sponsors. There were some late sponsors, so if I miss one, please stand up and scream, okay? We have some exhibition table sponsors. Mr. Joey Nations, he has a table, and there he is back there. The Libertarian Party of Oregon has a table, and I think Tim Sipple is manning it. There he is, he's back there. Now he's going to be handing out this world's smallest political quiz. You'll find it probably on your table. If you're curious, fill it out and bring it over there, and you can post where you land on the political quiz. That said, Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 nonpartisan organization. We'll sell an exhibition table, but we do not endorse any candidate, we do not oppose any candidate or legislation or ballot measure. We are about training grassroots activists how to do politics. There's also the John Birch Society has a table, and Oregonians for Fair Elections, which is led by Janet Dysinger. There she is back there. They are an affiliate of Western Liberty Network, by the way. Now, if you notice on your packets, on the cover, the packets were sponsored by Mr. Bill Currier. And individual sponsors of $1,000 or more include Mr. Sam Carpenter, Patty Milne, Kim Thatcher, and we have a lot of conferences that have teamed up, or a lot of organizations which have teamed up with us on this. Cascade Policy Institute, FreedomWorks, the Lars Larson Show, Oregon Citizens Lobby, and the Taxpayer Association of Oregon. Thank you. These organizations help to spread the word. Yes. And then finally, our foundational sponsors. Without these people, WLN would be a lot smaller than it is right now. And they include the Northwest Hazelnut Company, and someone who I'll be talking about later today who can't be here today. His name is Mr. John Bryan. Some of you may have heard of him. He personally organized, set up, and ran 15 charter schools in North Carolina and some in Indiana and Arizona. He is a hero for school choice, and he is also a hero for the Western Liberty Network. God bless John. I'm sorry he wasn't able to make it, but he is going to get all the recordings that we have today. So, I think I've gone over the preliminaries. The one thing I do want to go over before I start with our first speaker is the packet. In the packet, you will find, if you open it up, you'll see two papers. On the right side, you'll see a list of our sponsors, and I urge you to please take a look at that and check out the tables throughout the course of the day. And then behind that will be WLN training documents. These are companion documents that go with a lot of the sessions that you're going to be able to attend today. On the left side, you'll see an agenda. All the details are there, the times, and all of that. Now, the breakout sessions are organized along 4 tracks of instruction. They're delineated by color. The blue track is how to be effective as a citizen lobbyist. The red track is how to get elected to and serve in local office. The green track is running local campaigns and building your organization. And the yellow track is defeating liberal attempts to silence free speech. And so the way you know which room you want to be in is there are signs in the front of the rooms. We're going to divide this room later, and we're going to have the yellow, the green, and the red room. And there's a sign in front of the room, and there's also a sign on a table in each room. There's a yellow breakout room. If you want to go to the blue room, what you do is you go out pass where you registered, take a left, and go to the Willamette room. That's where the fourth breakout is going to be. And then we'll meet back up here at lunch. Now, I got myself into a little bit of a pickle when I was organizing this. And I have a friend, Sam Carpenter, and he's been a longtime supporter of Western Liberty Network. And he's spoken to the group many times, and he asked if he could again. And I said, sure. But I forgot that he was running for the Oregon Republican chair position. And not everybody supports Sam, that's okay. And so I started to get a lot of, hey, what's going on here? What's going on here? And so I said, oh no, okay. Bill Currier, current ORP chair, would you like to speak for a few minutes? And he said that he would do that. And we worked out all of that. However, there are rules. This is a 501c3 organization. And both of them have agreed to talk about the grassroots movement, its place in the larger limited government movement, but they're not going to make reference to their race, and they're not going to make reference or endorse of a particular party. And I trust both of these men to do that. I don't want to lose our tax-exempt status. That would be bad. But these are both honorable men, and I'm proud to have them speak at our conference. And so at this point, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Sam Carpenter. Oh, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. Bill Currier, they agreed to speak. Bill Currier will speak first.
Good morning. For those of you that know me, this is not my usual voice. So if I get kind of excited and talking and start squeaking, I hope you'll understand. There is a lot to be excited about, even though things seem rather gloomy at the moment. I was in Albuquerque last week at a RNC meeting, and when you take the White House and then you have the midterm elections, it's pretty typical, almost without exception, to lose seats in Congress and other areas. Up and down the ticket, as it were. And I expected the mood to be somewhat somber, but it was actually pretty enthusiastic. And I'll get into that in a moment. But I guess I'll start off by saying there's one thing I'd like you to take away from the few comments that I have this morning. And that is that in Oregon, we have many groups that are working on a specific issue. It might be a constitutional issue like the Second Amendment, or it might be a social issue like life and the sanctity of life and protecting life. But what we haven't had in Oregon for decades, from my perspective, is a real coordinated statewide effort to maximize the message, the timing, and the maximum impact possible by these organizations working together. Now, Richard made the rules pretty clear before I came up, and to Sam and I. And so I just have to say it's very, very hard for me not to speak in a partisan way, given my role. And but you folks are really the patriots. Everyone here knows the difference between a patriot and a loyalist, right? If you look at the history of our country, a loyalist was true to government, and a patriot was true to his countrymen and his country, and was serving in the best interests of those people. Well, here in Oregon, we have sort of a loyalist dominant makeup in the electorate. And as Richard mentioned, they're heading straight for socialism. I posted something the other day, just sort of came to me, it's like their love affair with socialism is their fatal attraction. And it's going to become our fatal attraction if they take us down with it. So you, as patriots, stand in the breach between what our country was intended to be and founded to be and the direction that we're going. And that is actually a good news for us, in the sense that just like the patriots of old, of the founding of our country, realized the threat that they faced, they were activated and they became involved, and they made a difference, not because they stood alone, but because they banded together. And we have that same opportunity to band together. We can't just say we agree on certain things. For example, that we agree on limited government, or that we agree on free markets, or that we agree that socialism is bad, because it's not a bad word to them. It's a good word. So we have to not only agree on our shared principles and our shared objectives, but we have to agree to work together. We have to agree to band together to win. Now, Oregon is considered a very blue state. How are we going to win? How are we going to work together to win? And I would say this. I might not be able to go the full 10 minutes or whatever it is. Make my point quickly here.
Good cough drops.
Cough drop. The post-20 election analysis that we've done so far, and we have lots of data to crunch, but it's suggesting a number of dynamics that can work for us, sort of like jiu-jitsu and using your opponent's energy and strength against them. The Democrats are, oops, all right, there we go, back into my mold. The other side, those who would be opposed to limited government and free markets and everything that most of us are here for, or much of what we're here for, are going to overreach. We know that. Thank you very much. They're going to overreach, and it's going to create opportunity for us. There's going to be, we all know that the political landscape is described by contrast. And so our opportunity is to create that contrast, to make sure that that contrast is there. Will it feel futile? Yes, it will. Because we're the underdogs. But these concepts are going to come, the full weight of these concepts, these poor policies that are being introduced, these policies that attempt to strip us of our constitutional rights, will come down, the full weight of those will come down on people regardless of political affiliation. And they will feel those effects. And we will be there to talk about that and to make sure that they understand that. Because there will, as Richard mentioned earlier, come a turning point. There will come a time when people will say enough is enough. We're already there. But we're going to help them get there. There's I'm going to try to keep this to 10 minutes. So there are basically 5 things that the post-election task force has come up with that I'd like you to ask any organization that you're affiliated with. Many of you here in the room, most of you here in the room, are affiliated with at least one organization that would advance the cause of limited government, free markets, and would be against socialism in general. Most of you are involved in at least one organization like that. So I'm asking you to go back. This is my call to action for you, to go back to that organization and ask the following 5 things. Number 1, what are we doing to identify those voters? I can talk about voters, right, Richard? I can say the word voters, right? Okay, all right. Just making sure. Identify those voters that share our values. And not just identify them. And we have lots of voter data. But let's use analysis. We do have analysis on that data. Let's use the analysis on that data to identify voters that share our values. And more importantly, if you're thinking in terms of a PCP, I can say PCP, right? Because both sides have PCPs. The focus should be on identifying those voters that share our values that are extremely interested in recruiting other people to get involved. That should be the first focus. Not just people that want to get involved, but people who have a special interest and ability to bring other people into your organization. That should be the first. So ask your organization, whatever organizations you're affiliated with, what are we doing in that regard to identify those people? Whatever issue that organization is focused on is fine. But we have to work together on our shared values. Number 2, what common resources does your organization share with other resources? For example, a database where data can be shared across the state with organizations that share common values. This is something that's already being done by people advancing socialism. They're already banded together. We're behind the curveball on this one. We've got to do that as well. So that's number 2. What shared resources do we have that we're working on together? Number 3, what have we done as a group? What has our organization done to identify the true motivating factors? I'll call it, for lack of a better term, opposition research on those opposing our values, those that are advancing socialism. Where did they come from? Where are they getting the resources to advance their ideas? What are their weak points? Sort of like a SWOT analysis. What has our organization done to identify and do a SWOT, not only within our organization or about these other organizations that oppose us, but also with the other organizations that we're working side by side with? How are we working together? 4, what people are being recruited to either advance measures, not just bring other people into the organization, but advance these causes, either to bring a measure forward on the ballot or a candidate that runs for office. What efforts are being made to identify people at all levels, particularly the lower levels? We have a real shortage of people advancing our causes, our shared causes, at the lower levels. We need those people to build confidence and rise up through the ranks of office so that they are not bound to special interests, but can really advance principles they believe in personally, the reasons that they got involved, instead of being beholden to special interests. And that's really, really important to build our base or our farm team, as some people call it. And then finally, 5th, and this is probably the most important. There's a lot of talk about how we message or how our candidates message. Are they in one direction or the other of the spectrum enough to be a viable candidate? I would argue that is the wrong focus. It isn't there aren't litmus tests that we need to put against our candidates, for example. They're advancing our shared causes. What there is there's the ability to work together to have a message that is timed with other messages. So, for example, if you can imagine multiple organizations, each with their own specific focus, not only working together, but planning together, looking out 2 years, 4 years on a time horizon, and agreeing not only to share a message, but to share the timing and the emphasis of that message based on the strength of each organization. There's things that one organization can say that another cannot. So how are we complementing each other's efforts? Or again, how are we really building a cohesive or coordinated statewide effort? And part of that 5th point is simply the timing of that message. For example, if we have a measure that we want to put on the ballot, the election that we choose to put that measure in or on can make a big difference on the success of that measure based on what else is happening. So with a statewide coordinated effort, we can actually achieve the level of functioning that we should have had all along, that the other side, and I can say other side, I think.
There are many sides.
There are many sides. Some of the other sides, the conglomerate of the other sides, is already doing. We have to get up to speed in order to be more effective. But the opportunity is there. And I hope that as you attend the sessions here, and I know you will be, you'll be empowered to go out and do some of the things, the 5 things that I've just listed within your own organizations to advance the cause of freedom at every level, economic, social, whatever it might be. And I appreciate, Richard, the opportunity that you've created these 5, it's 5th year. Ninth year.
That's okay.
The opportunity that you're creating for this knowledge to be spread in Oregon. And so thank you for each of you being a patriot and not a loyalist. And I'd ask that you commit to coordinated statewide effort, multiple organizations working together to advance our shared causes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill. I have to confess I messed up. I got distracted and didn't time the speech. How do you do?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Very good? And how do you do? How do you do with the rules? You think you did okay? Yeah, I think I give him a solid B+. So that's fantastic. We are a nonpartisan organization, and we have. They're not going to speak today, but we have some Libertarian Party leaders here as well. Greg Burnett, who I mentioned before, he is here, and Tim Sipple running the booth. There's Tim Perkins. I don't know where he is. And Tim Reeves is here, and these people are officers and activists in the organization, and we recognize you too. So thank you very much for coming today. And so now is the time when we will bring up Sam Carpenter. He has a slideshow. We'll get that set up for him. And so Sam's been a supporter for Western Liberty Network for a long time. I can't believe it's been 9 years. It's been 9 years. But we're really getting our momentum going, getting our mojo. So Sam, come on up. Come on, thanks.
Where'd Bill go? It's not easy to not be partisan right now. I get it. And Richard, I want you to know I'm a solid C student, okay? Let me get this timer going. Hey, give me 5-minute signals, will you? Somebody? I get 15. Hey, I want to point out my beautiful Kentucky wife over here, Diana. And Richard, you've been doing this for a long time, and I've watched you from the beginning. What a struggle it's been. And you filled the house. The first time, right? Absolutely filled the house. What he's doing is such a noble thing, and he has suffered through meetings of 4 and 6 people in far, far counties away from here where he lives. And I give you such credit, man. I couldn't have done it, I don't think. So just briefly, those of you who don't know who I am, I've run for U.S. Senate really once. I started to run in 2014 and dropped out after 3 weeks to support another candidate who I thought was a better candidate. And then 2016 I ran again and came in second. And then the gubernatorial election I came in second. And it's a long story. But I wrote a book about it. Anybody who wants this book, just come see Diana and me. It's hot off the press. I did 400 copies, and first come, first serve. It talks about grassroots, okay? So here we are. Go back, please. Thank you. So there is a subtitle there, and it has to do with the reinvigoration of the grassroots. I can't say the rest of it because it's partisan, and I'll go into the D area if I do that. This has to do with most Oregonians by far, okay, regular folks. Now my background is digging ditches, cleaning other people's toilets, driving heavy equipment, flipping hamburgers, and on down the line until I was 35 and I bought a business. Now I've had a business in Bend for 35 years. I have some people who have worked for me for 30 years, literally, 2 ladies, and a lot of them for 20. And I kind of am aiming this to regular grassroots folks who think they're not qualified to run, okay, for office. Oh, you're qualified. You know why? Because you're down and dirty and you did what you had to do to survive. I encourage all of you to get out there and run for city council or run for any of the lower, what we'd call the lower echelon offices and get a feel for it. You really need to do that. I want to run through some slides here quickly so I don't miss anything, and I've got some other random notes if my time allows it. So, yeah, the revitalization of Oregon's grassroots. We had to make some slide changes. So, what you thought parenting would look like, right? Go backwards. Oh, there's so many analogies we could do with this. How about marriage? How about politics? How about what we do on our side and what they do on the other side? Or how about grassroots people as they come into politics? That's what I thought. I'm a little crusty around the edges now after 4 statewide races. Go to the next slide, because this is what it's like. No, go back, please. This is what it's like in the higher you go up into your races, okay? I'd say it starts about city council level, all right? Now it gets personal. Go ahead. We live in a generation of emotionally weak people who need everything watered down for them because it's offensive, including the truth. Anybody not understand what I'm saying here? Thank you. And so that's what we've got going for us. Most of our grassroots people. And Ty, our military people, Bruce, Keith Syme, where's Keith? There you are. Retired military, Marine Colonel. You two need to connect.
That's Mark, Semper Fi, the crew.
Yeah. Mark?
Every day.
Yeah. So, down and dirty, doing what you have to do to get by. It is such a powerful thing. And I'm telling you this, in my last race, we were winning based on the grassroots of Oregon. And my main message here is how powerful the grassroots here are in this state. So powerful. You know why? Because there's so damn many of us out there. There are so many of us. Don't get disgusted quite yet. Don't go to Texas just quite yet. It's not time. Every day, we need an electoral college, we need the state of Jefferson, and the hell with it, I'm moving to Texas or Idaho or whatever. It's not time to go because there is such power. And I'm not just up here rah-rah. The reason I wrote this book was because we saw the power in the race, the gubernatorial race. What happened was a little diabolical at the end. And I can't talk about that right now, but I'm telling you, there is such incredible power out here. And one thing, Richard, evidence is of the number of people in this room right now, because I've never seen anything like this. So anyway, let's flip over and keep going. Our current progressive Democrat leadership, no, better flip that one. I think we pulled that one. Government is not to be our master, it's to be our servant. And I've had a belly full of the ruling class's unrelenting insistence that we working people are not smart enough and not sophisticated enough to do our own thinking and to operate our own lives. And here's the key. This isn't just Republicans or conservatives. Do you know how many Democrats and unaffiliated and Greens and Libertarians are out there just waiting for candidates to come along that will sing their song? You know, I happen to be a Republican, but that's not exactly what's in my guts. What's in my guts is independence and freedom, a big path for the kids and the grandkids, a broad path of opportunity up. I want safety for my family, right? I want security for my family, and I want opportunity. And when the government's sucking out 50% of everything you make to do whatever, that's not good. That's not a good mechanical plan for success for that country. I wrote this book. It has to do with efficiency. And what I bring into an organization is efficiency, and that's what I want to see in our grassroots. And Richard's doing a #1 job in keeping people together and getting out there and giving them encouragement. I'm telling you, there's such power out there if we can get organized, and people will step up and do what they need to do. And every one of you in here is probably a likely candidate if you haven't already run for office already. You need to think about it. It's the most satisfying thing you can do. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, and I had the same question about my book. Was it fun? Was it fun to write the book? Was it fun to run for office? No, it's not. But you know what? It's satisfying. It's satisfying. It's very satisfying to be able to, for instance, put what you believe in a thing you can hand somebody, or get up in front of a group and say how you feel. This is prime time for me. I love talking to folks and saying how I feel about things. Go ahead. Let's go to the next one. But what about the bigger and more accurate comparison that this is not red versus blue, but ruling class versus country class? It's very important. In this comparison, we have the ruling class Republican establishment and Democrat progressives agreeing completely with each other that change is not necessary. Things are fine as is. How many of you in this room think things are fine as is? I'm looking, I'm searching. Change has to happen. You've heard all the platitudes. If there's no change, you fall behind. All that's really true. All that's really, really true. But what we have now is not red versus blue. We have elites versus us. And I'm talking about Democrats, 70% of Democrats. I'm talking about independents. We need to start talking about the issues and everyday things that affect families. And not whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican. Now, don't mistake me for going to the middle of the road. I'm not one of those guys. If I'm going to cross the aisle, it's probably to slap somebody, okay? I'm just saying the votes are out there. Our last gubernatorial candidate got 6 and 7% of the Democrats in Portland. I think there were some quiet Trumpsters out there, and I'm not getting partisan at all here. What I'm saying is we don't have the votes, if you go by registration records, to win elections. We need votes from the other side, and how do we do that? We don't get it by kissing up and meeting halfway. We get it by taking them on, because I'm telling you, there's a percentage of those people, and it's a good solid percentage, that will come over if they see viable candidates at the smaller levels and at the top levels. Guaranteed. Ruling class versus country class. Angelo Codavia wrote a book called The Ruling Class, and it's mandatory reading. It's like $9 on Amazon. It's a very short book. Let's go with the next one. Next one, Gil. Okay, McCreary County is once again showing up as the poorest county in both the state of Kentucky and the whole of the United States. Okay, how many counties are there in the United States? Anybody want to hazard a guess? 3,000. 3,000. Diana is from McCreary County. I met her at a political function in Washington pushing 4 years ago. We have a second home in Kentucky. I love these people. I'm from a very poor county in upstate New York. These are the most wonderful people you ever met, but they don't have a voice. They took away the coal. They took away the timber. Textile mills. There's a wonderfully beautiful little road we take called Shirt Factory Road. Shirt Factory Road. There's none of that anymore. Buffalo, New York. I don't care where you go. We've been devastated. All of us have been devastated by the international agreements and so forth. You know what it is. And you know what the problems are. I'm not going to spend any time on that. This is where the power is. The power is in the grassroots in McCreary County, in Lewis County, where I'm from, and right here. And this is in the cities, too. Okay? The country class is in the cities. They've just been quiet. We have been intimidated. We have been intimidated to be quiet. We've been intimidated that this is a blue state. It's blue if you want to look at registration numbers, but I'm telling you, the country class very much overwhelms that 30% of, Richard, when you were gone, I told everybody I was a C student, so I'll stop before you put me to D. I don't care what party anybody belongs to. The votes are there. The votes are there to take this country back for limited government. That's number one, limited government. And then we'll work out the abortion thing, we'll work out the gun thing, but we've got to limit the size of our government and get them out of our face. And this means we have to fight. This means fighting. This doesn't mean reaching across the table. It means going after it and doing the best we can. Because you know what? That's what they're doing. You saw those velociraptors? I'm done? Am I done?
Close enough.
Close enough? One more minute. I'm telling you, they're fighting and we're backing down. Anybody want to keep backing down? How's that done for us? Any good at all? No. Again, not necessarily Republican, okay? I'm saying the grassroots and taking back our country. That's almost cliche now, but it has to happen. And the only way we're going to do it is to take that apple cart and flip it over. That's what we've got to do. We have to do it now. We can't wait any longer. They're killing babies on tables in New York. It's going to come here too. So anyway, thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Sam. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's yours. Yeah. Okay.
You know, Sam kept saying that, he's a C kind of guy. And that's not a bad thing. You know, David Letterman was a C student, and he actually set up a educational foundation for C students.
Can I get equal time?
What's that?
Can I have equal time now that you said that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm easy to deal with. So that's fantastic. All right. Somebody said 3,000. 3,000 counties, and that reminded me that in the May elections this year, there are going to be 3,500 positions, give or take a few, up for election. Some of them are like school board, city council, some of them are cemetery control board. You know, there's even an elected ham radio board out there, and they work ham radios and they get prepared for emergencies. These are all important positions. There is not an unimportant position. And so I encourage you, if you haven't done so, run. If you have run before, run. This is how we're going to take responsibility for our governance. I'm really glad that we had the two presentations. I thought they were really interesting. Now we're going to go to our next speaker, and that is Noah Wall. Is Noah here?
Very good.
Okay. Noah Wall. I've met Noah Wall a number of times, at different meetings around the state, and he's attended, I think this is his third Western Liberty Network conference. He is the head of campaigns for the FreedomWorks National Office, and he and Emily Stack, where's Emily? Is she here? Emily right there? And she works with grassroots organizations, and then there was John Tamney, who came last night, if you were at the party. He spoke. He was awesome. And so I'm really proud of our relationship with FreedomWorks. And with that, I'll turn the microphone over to Noah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate you having me. Yeah, it's my third year here. I always enjoy coming out in January or February to Western Liberty Network Conference. Want to thank, just real quick, the FreedomWorks activists in the crowd. I want to thank you guys for all your help, and I want to single out Jack Atkins. I want to thank Roxy. I want to thank Bob Soden for all of your help over the years, many of them predating me joining FreedomWorks. So I just wanted to talk really quick, just outline what I want to talk to you guys about today, give you guys an update from Washington, D.C., what's going on, hopefully give you guys some insights about what you're not necessarily hearing in the news, because not everything makes it outside of D.C. So I want to start out today with some good news, what I consider good news. Other people might not agree. I want to talk a little bit about some bad news, some scary news about what's going on with the Democrat and progressive side of the political spectrum. And then I want to talk about opportunities that we're going to have going forward over the next 640 days until the 2020 presidential election. So I want to highlight those three things, and I'm going to start out with the good. And again, as I mentioned, what I think is good. I want to talk a little bit about the government shutdown. In D.C., the government shutdown is a tragedy. To most Americans, I don't think you consider it a tragedy. Can I see a show of hands? Was the government shutdown a tragedy? No? Okay, not one other than me. So it's funny. In D.C., they actually Jose Andreas, who's a celebrity chef, started a food bank for government workers because these are all government workers who make up the 5 richest counties in America. Yep. Fairfax, Loudoun, Alexandria City, Arlington. These are some of the richest places in America, but the government shuts down for 34 days, and apparently they need food banks from celebrity chefs.
That was a show. That was just a show, a pretend that they're starving.
Yeah, no, they're not starving.
Yeah.
These are, no, they're not. That was definitely yes. Anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about the federal bureaucracy, which is, I'm sure, very boring to most people. I consider huge portions, not all, but huge portions of federal bureaucracy to basically be daycare for adults. And I think you can tell that they're daycare for adults by the fact when you have a government shutdown and there's about 800,000 bureaucrats that are considered non-essential. These are the same people who, when it snows an inch, they give them the day off. They can, stay home with the kids who don't have to go to school because it's cold. It's the same group of people who do not appreciate or understand what productive employment is. There are plenty of people who work for the federal government who occupy very important positions. People who are protecting our government, protecting our borders. There's all a number of important jobs. But I'm going to focus in on these 800,000 people who are non-essential. So again, I live in the D.C. area, and during the government shutdown, D.C. has some of the worst traffic in the country. It's pretty amazing. The government can shut down, and traffic during rush hour is still just as bad as it is when the government's not shut down. But I thought it was very interesting that I kept reading in those 34 days. The number of people in the federal bureaucracy who are starting to look for outside employment. I thought this was very good news. When I see people working in the federal government who say, I want to consider moving on to productive employment elsewhere, I think that's very good news. I'm going to read you some quotes that I pulled. So there's a job search site called Indeed online, and here's a quote from the director of economic research there. It looks like workers are starting to think about whether or not the federal government makes sense for them in the long term. Good, I like that. LinkedIn said in January that it saw a 59% increase in the share of government workers who said they were open to taking new jobs compared with unaffected workers. I like that. I think that's great. ZipRecruiter found in a survey showed 67% of federal workers, that's of all federal workers, said the shutdown made them consider leaving government to seek private sector employment. And there's multiple government surveys that show the federal worker morale is at its lowest that it's ever been, which is interesting because all of these surveys were pre-government shutdown. And so the only reason I can tell that they, are not happy is that they don't like President Trump, which is okay. But does any of this mean that they're actually going out and finding employment elsewhere? Well, actually, I think that there are some indications that they might be. Something that has not really made any news headlines that I've seen, and this is a trend that I noticed in 2017 and it's continued in 2018. If you average it out, the federal government bureaucracy has shrunk by 3,000 employees a month since Trump got elected. 3,000 a month. Now, federal government bureaucracy is anywhere between 7 and 9 million people. So 3,000 a month is not the rate that I would like to see it shrinking. But first of all, that means it's not going up, which is good. It's going in the right direction. And second, think about what bureaucrats do. Anytime they actually go into work and do something, the entire scope of their job is effectively to take away something that we have. Right. Either our money, our liberty, anything along those lines. And 3,000 people a month not doing that is excellent news. So next up, I want to talk next piece of good news, which doesn't receive a ton of publicity. Jack Atkins is going to be giving a breakout session on this. And he's spoken about it at previous Western Liberty Network conferences. Is a project of FreedomWorks that we're trying to tackle, which is the regulatory state. Regulatory state primarily affects rural Americans and overwhelmingly affects Americans in the western United States. So the regulatory state, this is everything from the EPA, this is regulating, they're now trying to take away and eliminate vaping, not by law, but through the regulatory process. They're trying to go through, this is what Obama administration did so well. And by the way, the Bush administration was very bad at this. The number of federal regulations under Bush increased dramatically. So it's not a partisan thing. But Trump has been the first president since the regulatory state was really founded, to actually start to dial it back. A statistic that is overwhelming, just to me, is that for every new regulation that Trump has put in, they have removed 12. Let me repeat that. For every one, yes, that deserves a round of applause. For every regulation that Trump has implemented, he has removed 12 regulations. And that might seem like a small thing, and so far I think it's had a little bit of effect on the economy, but you need to understand that these regulatory processes take years. To remove a regulation is a 2 to 3 year thing. So if you think that Trump's just 2 years into his administration, they're just getting started. So let's talk a little bit about numbers. So on average, so let's actually talk about this. So last year they removed about 170. They took about 176 deregulatory actions, compared to about 14 major regulatory actions through OIRA, which is the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. So anyway, that's very interesting. And 57 of those regulatory actions were considered significant, meaning they have impacts of $100 million a year or more. So my understanding is that so far this has had the impact of these deregulatory actions has been about 20 or 30 billion per year in actions that companies don't need to take to comply with these regulations. So about 20 or 30 billion dollars a year, which in the scope of the federal government is relatively small. However, just one example of an Obama-era regulation that we really hope we can repeal this year, it's in process, is federal fuel standards for cars and light trucks. Apparently, this one regulation, if we were to repeal it, should have between $120 and $340 billion impact on the economy. So, I mean, this is huge. I mean, these are fuel standards. These are these types of things have major economic impacts. So if you want to look at, and that's just one example, the types of economic impacts that we can have are huge. It's estimated that the regulatory burden on the United States economy, and again, these are not from laws, these are from regulations passed by federal agencies, is about $2 trillion a year. And that $2 trillion a year is just it's just pressing the brakes on the economy. Every regulation you repeal to remove that burden just allows the economy to move further and further ahead. Which brings me on to the next piece of good news. Some of which you guys, I'm sure, have heard about the January jobs numbers. 304,000 new jobs in January, which is excellent, despite the government shutdown, which was supposed to mean the economy was going to collapse. It did not collapse, as far as I can tell. Now, that was a widely publicized number, 304,000 new jobs in January. That's great. My understanding is there's been 5 million new jobs created since the Trump administration took office. Also great. However, what is awesome news is that a lot of these jobs, well, first of all, let's go through where these jobs were created in January. So, leisure and hospitality, 74,000 jobs. Education and health services, 55,000 jobs. Construction, 52,000 jobs. Transportation and warehousing, 27,000 jobs. And mining and logging. Now, I'm from Oregon. My father was a logger when he was a teenager, before going to college. And he always told me that logging would never come back. Well, apparently, mining and logging, there's 7,000 new jobs in that sector, which is awesome. And apparently, since Trump was elected, there have been 481,000 new manufacturing jobs, which is amazing. But again, a lot of what you don't hear, so hourly earnings for employees. The part of the problem has been in the economy is not necessarily that you can't get a job, it's that you're not seeing wage growth. Well, wage growth last year rose 3.2%. First time it's been over 3% in 10 years, which is awesome. We want to be seeing better paying jobs, not just more jobs. So that's great news. What the best piece of news that I've seen about the economy, I'm going to quote an article I read last night. The one statistic that is underrepresented is the share of newly employed workers who said they were not actively looking for work the previous month. So these are people who are re-entering the workforce. These are people who do not show up in the 4% unemployment. These are people who stopped looking for jobs years ago and are starting to look for jobs again. That is a historic high. You have more than 7 in 10 newly employed workers this month that were not actively looking for a job last month. That is great news. This is we are taking people away from what Obama created was this underclass of people who just couldn't get a job and dropped out of society. And we are bringing those people back into the fold. That is the best news on the economy. And there's a lot of other good news, and I have to speed things up. Obviously we've had 2 Supreme Court appointments. We might have a third in this, during Trump's first term. We'll see. He's doing the Lord's work on appointing judges, which will have impacts for decades. So anyway, all great news. Fine. Let's go to the bad news, scary news. So Democrats are very good at doing what they promise when they get elected. Their craziest, the campaign promises they make to their base, they're usually very good at keeping those. So I want to just highlight a few of the things that they're talking about doing in 2020. Have you guys heard of House Bill 1? Okay, so this is the For the People Act, which means it's not for the people. It's essentially federalizing the electoral process. It's it's public financing of elections, standardizing of rules, all sorts of really horrible things that essentially all boils down to them trying to take over the process so that Republicans just aren't able to win. And so this isn't going to pass, but it's what they want to do, and it's what they would do if they controlled both branches of Congress and controlled the presidency. This is what they would do. They're going to be pushing for a Green New Deal if they win in 2020. This is a huge jobs bill it's a huge jobs bill, and it's a huge, they're going to be trying to shut down coal plants. So they're going to be pushing for that. Medicare for all. It's going to cost $3 trillion a year and eliminate all private insurance. They want to do free college for all, which is insane. I guess it's an employment bill for liberal arts teachers. They want to shut down Homeland Security. They want to have either, depending on who you listen to, a 70 or 90% income tax rate. And they want a wealth tax. So they want to tax your net worth whether you earn money or not that year. And then, they're crazy on social issues that you guys have all seen this week in Virginia and New York. All horrible things. But I want to finish by saying that I think that these scary, and they're very scary, because they would ruin countless people's lives. Their rhetoric and the fact that they cannot help themselves, they don't even control the Senate, but they are just acting like, they're going to just ram through this legislative package that is all designed to take away all of our liberty and take away all of our money and give it to the government. Their overreach is our opportunity. Even people in liberal parts of Oregon do not want, people who work for Nike do not want to lose their private insurance, which is what would happen if we passed Medicare for all. Every single thing that the left is pushing has a very good counter argument that you need to make, and you all need to be evangelicals in your community about this. You need to tell your neighbor about Medicare for all, and you need to ask your neighbor if they know what will result in their kids losing their private insurance through their employer. You need to ask your coworker if they know that the Green New Deal would make buying a car so expensive they would probably need to take the bus to and from work. and make, by the way, flying so expensive that they would need to save up for years to be able to go and see their grandkids 2 states over in Utah. That's what these Democrat bills would do. So please spread the word, be evangelical about what we're trying to do, because the stakes could not be higher. I want to thank you guys for coming today. I want to thank you guys for doing what you do. Keep up the good work. Keep the faith. Keep doing what you're doing. And thank you all for being here.
Okay, before we get going with the breakout sessions, and we're actually on time. How about that? We're on time. I want to acknowledge former State Representative Jeff Krupp, who just came in. He's going to be leading a couple of training sessions today. I want to recognize him because I think if it wasn't for Jeff, there would be no WLN. When I worked at the Oregon legislature, Jeff saw what I had done, and he saw my libertarian run for governor in '98, and he hired me as the grassroots director for Oregon Americans for Prosperity. And over the course, Jeff, Matt Evans, and myself, we organized 32 chapters around the state. And then AFP had a change in direction, and they pulled out of Oregon and Washington and a lot of other states. But I didn't want to see that network go away. And that was the impetus for Western Liberty Network. One big difference between those organizations, which are fine organizations, and Western Liberty Network, is that we don't have subordinate chapters. Subordinate chapters have to obey 501c3 restrictions and all of those other things. We have what are called independent affiliates. We have an attorney who wrote an agreement that defines the relationship between Western Liberty Network and existing organizations, and that agreement says that we offer training, and they agree to make training opportunities known to their rank and file members, but other than that, the two organizations are separate, independent, and apart. So they get the benefits of being in a network, but they get all the independence that they want in the work that they do in their communities. So for all that you have done, thank you, Jeff, for all that. And finally, in your packet, you're going to find these things. It's a rainbow of pages. These are evaluation forms. The first one is where you can evaluate featured speakers, but I've got a question. How did you find out about this conference? I'd like you to fill that out. We tried a variety of things, and a lot of them worked apparently, to get the word out, and so we'd like to find out what worked and what didn't. And then there's an evaluation sheet for each breakout session. We give these to the presenters, and we've been told that they are helpful, and they help us improve the event. So please fill out the evaluation sheets throughout the course of the day. If you need more space to write, you can scribble on the back, and when you're done, you can drop them at the registration desk. Just drop them, we'll figure it out later. You don't have to sign your name unless you want to, and with that, we will begin our first breakout session. We're going to divide these rooms, and it's kind of the Lucky Charms moment. We've got the red room, yellow room, green room, and the blue room is outside, so it's just like the green clovers, yellow diamonds, pink moons from Lucky Charms, and so that's good. So we're going to break now. We'll see you back here at lunch. There are 2 breakout sessions before lunch, and we're going to have more fun. Thank you very much. Lars Larson's at lunch. Thank you.